Wait, is this thing on? Can y'all hear me? Okay, here we go.
Woo! Just a dash. Just a dash. Just a dash. Just a dash.
I feel like the only way I can start off this episode is with the one and only greeting. Hey, sweet peas. It feels incredible to say that again. It also feels incredibly surreal to say that again because where do I even begin? I guess the only place to start is by saying that there have been so many moments over the last 3 years where I've thought about starting this podcast again. And it feels strange to say that out loud because in some ways it feels like I just launched season one, and in other ways it feels like a lifetime ago. And I think time is always funny like that. It can feel long and short and expansive and immediate, like all at the same time. But when I first started this podcast, I was so nervous. I actually told one of my best friends that I wasn't sure my voice was enough, that being a solo host could really hold people's attention, which is kind of funny because people often tell me I have a podcast voice or a radio voice, which is very flattering. But it wasn't really about my voice. I think it was more about my confidence, about stepping into new territory. I was always the kid and I was the young adult who just needed everything to kind of be perfectly planned out before I was hitting play, before I was jumping in. And I blame that on my Virgo stellium, I think. It has its moments still, but it comes in handy as an event producer, which I still am. But I've just become a lot more flexible, I think, over the years. And the short of it is, I just don't feel the need to perform in the same way that I used to. I think I've always been about authenticity, but I was still chasing ideas of success and productivity. And I'm just not operating in that same way anymore, which I think is important to mention because I think it actually very much reflects a shift going into this season. The first time around, I really had specific segments. I had Say What, I had Word to the Wise, The Rec Room, just a lot of cultural moments and news breakdowns. And I really loved doing them. And if you've been here from the beginning, you know I always have thoughts. So that part of me isn't really going anywhere. But this time around, I'm less interested in performing like the commentary on things, and I'm more interested in presence. So you'll hear shorter intros, and then we'll just kind of jump into the conversation because I want it to be the dialogue that's leading the way. I don't really want people to worry though. I'm not retiring my opinions. I think that there will always be space for that and room for that on this podcast. And there will absolutely be like hot topic episodes here and there. JP, my co producer and one of my best friends, and I will definitely unpack what's happening in the world when it feels right. I just don't want it to feel like the pressure or the promise every single time, you know? This season is about depth over density. It's about connection over commentary. Some things haven't changed though. I will still be cursing. I feel like in the first season, I was so timid about that at first and who was listening. And then I just allowed myself to be the sailor that I am. So I will just be going into it being a sailor this time around. But also, the first time around, I only was able to get one episode out before I went on hiatus. But I was really drawn to the idea of home even back then. And I think part of it has to do with my zodiac sign. I'm a Cancer, and home is where the heart is for us. It's very much our baseline. But I think in hindsight, my intuition was also already at work. At the time, everything I thought about home was shifting. I was moving into my own place for the first time after 10 years, which was wild. It was not something that I thought I would honestly ever achieve. And sometimes it still leaves me in awe. I was leaving a job that I really loved, but I just felt really overextended in and underpaid, to be honest. But shout out to the dream team who are still wonderful friends of mine to this day. And I was exiting a lot of different like dynamics as well, platonically and a romantic one, which I will just generously say was complicated. And I thought, honestly, when I started season two back then, that I was stepping into something better. You think you're hot shit. I just found myself in a new kind of circus. And I remember talking to my dad on a really hard day. And he did that Caribbean parent thing where like they listen to you and then they chuckle, like, foolish girl. And I was so annoyed, but I also had to give him credit because he said something that really led to an aha moment for me. He said, "Did you think that this was the end? That you'd reach the top? I think the problem is that you didn't think about what comes next." And that struck me. It really did. And I think as I think back to that moment 3 years later, I understand something now that I really couldn't then, which is that home was never a fixed idea. It's not just an apartment, it's not just a job, it's not even someone choosing you. It's so much more abstract than that, which is probably why that first episode I did when I was launching season 2 back then was about finding home in your name. And I encourage y'all to go listen back to that episode. Shout out to my guests, Miles and Aaliyah, two beautiful individuals, two trans individuals who share their stories and how they arrived at home for themselves. Really was so special to learn from them. And I think it's why now, returning back to this season, returning back to this podcast, I wanted to stay in that space because I am still learning what home feels like, even more so now, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and socially. So, this season, I really want to explore that with people who shaped my understanding of home in different ways, whether it's friends, thinkers, creatives, people who just find sanctuary in their passions, in their growth, in their expression. Because I think if I'm being real, I find myself really at home when I'm learning about other people and when I'm learning alongside other people who I just really am inspired by. Which brings me to today's conversation. On the surface, I know male loneliness probably doesn't feel like it's an obvious fit for the theme of home, but think about it. So much of who we are is shaped under someone else's roof. Our habits, our personality traits, our wounds, our coping mechanisms, our sense of self. And many of us spend our lives searching for home in one another. So, what happens when you've never really learned how to feel at home within yourself? Who do you become? How do you measure your maturity? And how does that ripple outward? And that's honestly where that conversation began for me around male loneliness. And it also happened to take place in someone else's home. And then it continued in my home. So for this episode, one of my friends, Beatrice, joins me. And for the first time, I actually recorded in my apartment, which was so exciting. You'll get to know her a little bit more through the conversation, but I just have to say this: B has a rare kind of observational clarity. She's bold and warm, thoughtful, fearless. She just holds her beliefs with such conviction and her curiosity with a lot of care. And I have to say, she cackles the same way I do, which was really lovely. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. I hope it leaves you thinking just a little bit more. And I really appreciate you for listening. And as always, stay fly. As I said, as I mentioned before we were even recording, this is a long time coming. Um, one of my favorite things to do is also I always have like an intake form for my guests, and I'm like, tell me a little bit about yourself. And reading B's, like, I was just like, oh my gosh, she's exactly who I thought she was, an icon, a goddess.
Oh my God, stop.
And I love for your pronoun because for your pronouns, you literally put she, her, that bitch, Miss Thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, all accurate. Like, all accurate. Like, actually, this is exactly who I imagined this person to be. And the reason I'm even saying that is because, like, we met through a beautiful little friend web. Shout out to our friend Taisha.
Ty, we love you.
We love you so much. And, we're both very lucky, I think, to have a friend who she and her partner Nico, people just they do a wonderful job of bringing people into a space, and it's always really fascinating, engaging, warm, loving environments, like when you're hanging out, with different pockets of friends that they bring together. And so that's really where B and I, our relationship not only formed, but like where it lives. Because a lot of the time when we see each other, it's at these get-togethers, and we just always you're one of my favorite people to converse with.
Oh,
And it's just such a funny thing that it only happens in these like sporadic moments. But like it's just
we're like the two people having very deep
Yes,
conversation.
in the
Everyone else is enjoying themselves.
Literally.
There's like painting
Literally.
going on, dancing going on, whatever.
Listen.
And we're just having these deep
philosophical
Oh my God.
conversations in the corner. We just end up finding each other. And I do think it's also why I was excited for this conversation, because I think at that party, I genuinely just remember that I had gotten something from the bodega to eat and we were sitting at the kitchen table, and somehow I think that maybe I know that I was definitely, because it was in the summertime, so I had been healing definitely from just the end of a dynamic that I decided like I needed to let go of, that was unhealthy, like a romantic dynamic. And we ended up talking about like the courage that people have, the vulnerability people have around dating, and particularly around men. But then the way that we started breaking it apart, it was one of those moments where I was like, this person understands the domino effect in relationships, in dynamics that are so much more the surface level approach, like a buzzword, you know? And then male loneliness epidemic came up.
The boys are lonely. The guys are lonely. And it's like, and you know, I actually kind of quartered it into certain sections.
Okay.
And let me see. I think I have notes here somewhere.
Okay. As you're looking at what you're looking, I'm gonna read the rest of the intro I have for you, because I have to share it. Because I want people to also understand why I wanted to have this conversation with you specifically. You are someone who's genuinely lived many lives. It was beautiful just reading all the different things you were talking about. Classically trained in opera as a child, a guest teacher at the International Center for Photography. I mean, a former nightlight promoter, a former blender, all these different things you wrote down. You taught me how to use it. Okay, we'll cut that out. Perfect. There you go. You have your first redacted. But my point is that you have range, like just the life that you've lived. But also what I've always witnessed when I'm conversing with you, when I'm listening to you, is you're very astute, you're very observant, and you're very insightful about human behavior. And I don't know if that's just because of all the different experiences you have. I do also think it's innate. And I think why it couples so well with this conversation is because you just so happen to also have a really amazing partner. You know, you do. You have a beautiful relationship, and yet despite being in that solid, loving place, you also hold a lot of clear-eyed reality checks about why so many people are experiencing loneliness. And I think it's really special when someone can have that sort of objectivity and want to kind of share their viewpoint on that, because I think it plants a seed. I think it plants a seed for people to consider things to talk about and to consider when they are thinking of that subject. And it was special to me when we had that conversation, because we were really understanding it as this goes back to like the home that people have for themselves, or that they were raised in, what was modeled for them, what was avoided. So I'm just excited to dive into this with you.
Me too.
You said that you had some sections or ways that you wanted to talk about it. Tell me more.
So here are some, this is just a free note, because sometimes I talk in my brain and I have to write things down because I'll forget what what I'm thinking about, but it'll resonate with me. Okay. I don't know if anyone has that. It's like being in it's like being in the kitchen and forgetting why you went in the kitchen.
Right.
Like, it's like that kind of thing. I'm like, I don't want to lose that thought.
I have way too many random notes, and I'll go back and look at them and I'm like, Blue Rabbit.
What did I mean by that? Right?
Why am I writing in code to myself? Like, why did I think that would work for me?
Oh my God.
Please continue.
So I wrote the reasons for male loneliness epidemic, I think, are several parts. I think the most important is the financial part.
Okay.
Let's talk about finance it as one section.
Okay.
Then we have economics, right? Your finances are going to dictate what kind of economic spending that you're going to be able to partake in, and what social place or sphere you're going to find yourself in.
Okay.
And then I guess your social mirror, or the people that you hang out with, meaning that they reinforce and socialize you into what is and what is not acceptable as far as your behavior is concerned.
Okay.
And then there is the who you are as a person, your internal self. Who is a man when he's standing alone by himself? So I think the first thing is again, with the financials, men are socialized, in my opinion. Again, men are socialized to define their self-worth by how much they make. And right now in the United States, we have the biggest wealth disparity in the history of the United States.
Yeah.
To put it plainly, boomers had 67% of the economic wealth. Now, millennials only have 17%.
They really don't get it when we're sitting here and saying life is different.
Life is different. When
we cannot afford the same things you could afford.
Exactly.
Talking about, why haven't you bought a house yet?
Because you're priced out.
Okay.
We are all priced out.
Correct.
And the reason why is because the 1% hoards their wealth.
Okay.
Once upon a time, there was this guy named Reagan. I don't know if anybody knows who he is. But he decided that he came up with the brilliant idea that making rich people pay less taxes would allow them to use their money that they're saving on taxes to spend more money in the economy, and that would help develop the middle class.
Right.
We all know that that is complete bullshit.
Ooh.
And what rich people do when they get very wealthy, or when they're wealthy, is that they hoard their resources. They hoard their wealth because they want to maintain it.
Right.
No matter what that looks like.
Of course.
And so, unfortunately for men, most of the men that I see who are in this male loneliness epidemic issue are experiencing it are men who have been promised the American dream, or were raised to think that they were going to partake in the American dream, as if there is the expectancy to participate in this as a man. Moreover, because of the privilege and like the
does it feel like it's like what's owed to them?
Exactly. Especially certain types of men, specifically white men, seem to...
I would say white straight men,
yes,
white cisgender,
cisgender
that's
men.
definitely the baseline where we start from with this, with when we talk about male loneliness, for sure. And I don't think that can be denied. I think that it should be obvious at this point that a lot of issues that we're dealing with will stem from the socialization around whiteness.
Yeah.
And that's a very rudimentary way of expressing that. But I think even what you're saying right now, I'm going to be honest, as I was thinking about this topic, that's such a real part of it. Like the expectation of men and like it being tied to the American dream. And one of my first questions I had for you was, what made you so interested in this topic? But now as I'm listening to you, I'm like, well, because it's like centered and root. It's such a central root of so many issues, especially surrounding masculinity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that men's response to not being allowed to participate in something that they were told that they have the right to have,
right,
as far as, again, this is not what I think, but this is what society makes of men, which is that you ain't shit.
Right.
If you don't have a good job and a nice car and a bad bitch, you're not that dude, and we don't want to hear your opinion. If you're not a high earning man, we don't want to hear what you have to say. And unfortunately, the men who don't fall into those categories, who are not allowed to participate because they don't have the access, the resources, the job, they don't have the money, they don't
internalize that hatred.
Exactly. Whereas women who experience the same thing, because it's not just men that go through this, it's women too. Women are also told, if you're not 5'5" and thick in the thighs, with no stomach, and looking like Cardi B with a Birkin bag and whatever, then you ain't shit either. But the difference is that women internalize things differently because we're socialized to internalize things differently.
Right.
Men get socialized to be violent when they're upset, and women, maybe we get socialized to be passive aggressive in an emotion and in
In different
doing
ways.
emotional harm.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to say that's all women or that's all men, but I'm talking very specifically
Right.
about this group of disenfranchised people.
Right. Okay. So with that, because I do think that kind of sets the tone for how you want to approach the conversation, I'm curious for you, when do you feel like, because I feel like you're usually ahead of the curve. But I feel like the whole male loneliness epidemic, there's just like always like buzzwords throughout the years, and there's always like a trend that kind of picks up. And we had, therapy was one of those things, and like healing spaces. And I feel like the male loneliness epidemic sort of thing really picked up, where it became a talking point and where we saw it in like think pieces about it. And now we actually have content creators who are specifically talking about this, and what do we need to do to combat it, and what do men need to do. And I'm curious, what moment made you realize how widespread the issue was?
Before I met my partner, I realized it was happening, but I
Yeah.
just didn't have the words to describe what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
Which is that there is a huge disconnection between men and women in the dating sphere because and this is my personal experience. I don't know if anyone else can identify with what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can. If you haven't had this experience, that's fine too. But before Bill and I met, I would go on dates with men who were comparing themselves to other men, and the conversation, and men compare each other all the time,
Right.
but it's a subtle change to comparing yourself to a man, involving the woman that you're dating, as in measuring up the woman that you're dating to one of your friends, but in a passive aggressive.
Yes,
You usually
a
used to keep
subtle way.
score in your car after dinner, driving,
Right.
driving back
It was an
home.
internal thought process
Right,
of
like,
consideration.
Like, oh, can you believe this bit?
Right.
Can you believe this motherfucker?
Or did that give me the ick?
Right, this kind of thing. Like, oh, wow, he brought a $10,000 Rolex to a simple lunch. Really?
Now at the actual dinner table, you're suddenly being told about certain traits, or just, I don't know.
It's great.
It's very subversive the way it's
weird.
done, and it feels oddly competitive. Are we each other's biggest ops? What's happening?
Exactly, and it's
what's happening?
And it's I noticed that the guys I was dating was making me the op because I was pointing out that he was feeling unfulfilled in life. How am I the enemy if you are upset that your friend has more than you?
Okay.
What does that have to do with me? You shouldn't even be thinking. The reason probably why your friend keeps getting ahead is because you're comparing yourself to your friend. Meanwhile, your friend is just living his life.
So I think the craziest part too is like, what I do think someone listening to you would really relate, or it would resonate. And I feel like what you're describing is like an offshoot. There are so many like offshoots and dynamics and experiences that people feel because of the male loneliness, whatever facet of it that they're like experiencing and don't know how to, I think, name out loud. And I'm curious, like, again, another question for you. When is a moment? I know for me, like, there have been different moments in my life where I've been like, wow, men really cannot, they do not know how to articulate their feelings.
No.
And it does not matter. And this is where I want to say, because I know before we were saying the baseline is white straight men, but I'm going to be honest. I think male loneliness, I think masculinity, it's all men, and it's all masculine energy.
I think the expectations are different when we enter different subcultures and races. And the expectations meaning that different subcultures feel entitled to different levels of experiencing living.
Correct.
And I'll keep it at that.
Sure. And I think at least an example for me where I realized this recently, again, I think this was this past Pride, but I was out one night, let's just say that.
Okay.
And it was at a gay club, and I'm there, and it was one of these baby queens who was out and about. And you know, when somebody is like talking out loud because they want somebody to say something, like they just want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they're not talking to nobody.
Definitely.
It was one of those full moon nights. I remember that. And I was like,
Oh,
I'll
Lord.
bite. My Gemini rising was feeling spicy. I was like, I'll bite. And they proceeded to like just tell me about this whole dilemma they were having with their ex, who they didn't expect to be there that night. And they were like kind of freaking out about it. And I was like, and they were like, oh, and I also have like this new guy I'm hooking up with. And I was like, okay, well,
Hook
what
up with the new guy, girl. What's the
leave
tea?
with the new guy. And then, you know, I've only been speaking to this person for maybe 20 minutes tops. And throughout that entire time, I thought to myself, so neither one of you has actually expressed what you're feeling. You just keep playing this avoidance game.
Mm.
And like, it's this kind of tit for tat of like, well, I can't be vulnerable first, or I can't be vulnerable first. And I was like, ooh, it's like, not only I'm like, oh, it's all men. And I was like, and it's even worse because you two men doing it to each other.
No.
I was like,
No.
that must be so exhausting. I feel like sometimes, and stay with me here, B, because I am kind of going all over the place.
Oh, I'm here. We're Gemini right now. So this giving
We are Gemini.
We're Gemini.
Period.
We're floating. We're floating, guys. Grab on.
We are bouncing around.
We're
Everybody
bouncing
keep up.
around.
We're on a new ride. There are moments where even as I, you know, have my own frustrations, my own pain surrounding my experiences with men, I also hold a lot of compassion because I think, well, you were socialized this way. And I was also socialized in a certain way to accept certain things that I am now unlearning and have to take accountability for in terms of how I also feed into this system or how I might have been feeding into this system. And there's a part of me that wonders, you know, if the patriarchy, if it's set up, if it's intentional, the way the system is set up, if it's by design to emotionally starve men while also privileging them, how do we really get them to confront that system?
You can't, but you can. And the way that you do it is that we have to understand that women are the protectors of patriarchy. And it starts with women who have sons and wind up hating the baby father or the husband and assigning emotional incestuous
Here we go.
roles to their little boys,
Right. And this is what we spoke
their
about at the
sons.
party.
And those sons who can do no wrong, all of a
Right.
sudden, they start doing wrong. And the mom is still like, but I love you so much.
Right.
But you love him in the way that's not allowing him to grow. And so when
Right.
we as women show up in the world and we're looking for a man and he's not it,
Yeah.
what are we supposed to do? So you see how
but because you're taking me back, that conversation, we literally said, we were like, it stems from the home. This is an offshoot again. Here's my issue when people are like, especially when now men wield the term and say like, oh, I'm in therapy. That's step one, babe. And I think a lot of
is such a red flag. If a man looks me in the eye and tells me he's in therapy,
that's like the new key word.
Oh no, it is a red flag. A man.
And I just want to sit there and be like, and what are you talking about? Are you telling the truth? The amount of men who have told me they're in therapy and then in the same breath, like when I point something out from their childhood, they're like, oh, your childhood affects you? You're not in therapy, bitch. You're not in therapy then.
Can I say something?
Because that's 101. That most of the issues we're seeing in adult men are stemming from childhood. In whatever facet way you want to shape it, we're all that way.
Lord.
You are all shaped by different things for better or worse that have occurred in your lifetime. And many of those things fundamentally are going to begin in the home that you were raised in, by the people whom you trusted, who either did things in ways that were healthy and benefited you, and did things in ways that were unhealthy and traumatized you.
Right.
Hello?
Exactly.
It's not rocket science, but turns out it is.
It's true.
So I remember us like having that conversation. And so I do, to a certain extent, I do agree that it's the boy moms. I also think it's the boy dads. I'm increasingly thinking to myself that whoever, if you are so lucky enough to have grown up with two parents, you have issues from both your parents. And I think
Right.
men don't realize how they are a reflection of that, for sure.
Yes, I think
And the
that
boy moms are very much I think, a prime example of that. We're talking about a very specific sort of parent who excuses their child's behavior, but also tries to form them into a specific type of person.
or assigns them this emotional, incestuous,
Yes.
weird
Dynamic relationship.
where responsibilities that are meant for the husband
Correct.
become the son's responsibility
Yes.
because he's the man.
And they become enmeshed with femininity in a way that also feels toxic and unhealthy, and they tend to universalize it.
Exactly.
And that becomes their baseline for understanding women.
And let's I know we're talking about male loneliness, but we also need to talk about pick me isms.
Ooh, okay.
Because pick me's and male loneliness,
They go hand in hand.
Go hand in hand. And the
They
reason
do
why
feed each other, for sure.
a pick me will get you killed.
Oof.
Okay.
And when people are justifying catcalling, or like when people are like, well, some women like it, I'm like, we talking about the pick me.
Yes.
Child.
A pick me will get. Hello, everybody who is listening to this podcast. If you have a friend, who is male centered, who you know in your sleep will pick a man over you, you need to run, because loneliness is lonely as a woman, but you'll still be alive.
Okay.
If you are around a pick me, and here's some examples of pick me. Nicki Minaj,
our most recent
pick me mistake
to the collection
out here with
and
Kenneth
actually
Petty.
so sad.
It's so sad
and unnecessary.
How low does your self-esteem? And I feel bad for her. I want to be very compassionate when I'm saying this. I feel bad that because of the level of success and uncharted territory and brilliance and genius that Nicki Minaj
still
has,
unfulfilled,
and she ends up with a monster like Kenneth Petty. Well, why? We have to talk about why.
We have to talk about why. But to get us back on track, because we'll keep steering
Gemini,
off.
I told you guys
we're gonna keep steering off. But to that end, though, because I do think as we're exploring that, it makes me think the following question I had to that, in terms of how we get them to confront that. You said boy moms, and then which ironically, Nicki Minaj is a boy mom.
Even just the way she talks about her own son is alarming.
Sure. The way that she's been engaging with other people about their children is alarming. The way that she defends her husband is alarming. And I do think that is someone who, like you were saying before, is feeding into the cycle of the toxic masculinity, of this male loneliness epidemic, of these ultra conservative, low key, we have some incels popping up. I mean, they've been popping up. So to that end, I mean, it feels so extreme sometimes. I don't know if you feel this way, B, but sometimes it feels like we are in a wormhole and like we're just further spinning in. And I'm curious, at what point and how do we hold men responsible for unlearning those emotional habits if it's something that they are continuously not having to learn, not having, as an expectation of them until they're far older?
As a person who works with mostly men, I'm going to say that I think the only way sometimes men can progress is with an enlightened man explaining to them why what they're doing or how they're thinking is wrong.
Right.
Because men tend not to listen to women unless they're like in their family. And unless it's a friend, and even that can be a little bit murky, you know, but like I tend to see men who, like, when they are paying attention and listening, it usually is coming from another man,
Sure.
like where they're absorbing something,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, and I'm talking about again cisgendered hetero spaces for the most part,
Right.
is that the dynamic there seems to be that men think that when women are talking about something that's problematic, that they're being lectured at and spoken to rather than engaging in conversation, and so their brains shut off.
Do you think that we are in a space where we're lecturing at men more than we are
Yeah,
actually engaging with them or
sure.
being conversational? Do you think that's part of the issue?
Yes and no. I think that men are tired of hearing the same things over and over again, but women are tired of having to tell men the same things over and over again.
Sure.
So here we are in this cosmic loop
Right. Like,
that
how do we
leads
interrupt
nowhere.
that?
The way to interrupt it is to remove yourself from something that is inherently going in a loop. And if enough people remove themselves from something that is in a constant loop, then it forces a person's hand to have to learn, because we're survival. We are survival beings. That is our instinct, is to survive. So if we are suddenly in a position, but here's the thing that's currently happening with men who are lonely, and they are crashing the fuck out everywhere. They're crashing
At
out
so many levels. It's
and
actually kind of insane.
and let's talk about. So the other thing I was gonna say was the other thing that made me realize that there was an epidemic was the aggressiveness that I would get from men if I would tell them I didn't want something, or I wasn't interested in something, or or if it wasn't my cup of tea, or
Sure.
if what they were doing was offensive to me. And the reaction is based upon the person not wanting to confront their behavior.
Absolutely.
And this is also
Extreme avoidance.
yeah, and it goes back to what we were talking about when I said a man saying he's in therapy is a red flag.
Oh my no,
Because
but
behavioral
it is
therapy is very different than talk therapy.
Thank you for saying that.
And
Please
they're
say
not
it
even the same.
again. People, I mean, I think that happens with a lot of different topics. It just gets super watered down and made to be digestible. And I do think some people will say like, well, people are talking about therapy and that's progress. And I'm
No.
like, it is and it isn't. Like, it's great. It's the same way I feel about astrology. Like, yes, it's good that it's in more mainstream spaces, but unfortunately when that happens it becomes a commodity and it becomes something to commercialize, and these are not like, therapy is actually a deeply intentional, personal, subjective experience that should be treated with care. And I don't think people understand like therapy should be that sort of relationship of uncovering things about yourself so that you're getting better, not just so that you just have a place for confession.
So let's touch on that. The two different types of a cognitive behavioral therapy. What you're describing is cognitive behavioral therapy, meaning that your behavior is, and this is how you know someone is really doing the work. Okay,
so important. Let's speak about it.
Okay,
because that was my next question.
A cognitive behavioral therapist will clock your behavior, will explain to you and ask you questions about why you thought the way you thought, or why you made the decision that you did, and hypothetically if you were in a different space how you would have changed that. A talk therapist is going to listen.
Yep. And it's no shade, because I do think all forms of therapy are important and people have different needs. But I know for me, talk therapy was a very confusing experience, because I can already assess like where the root is, or like I know where this stemmed from. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to rewrite this internal wiring that I have. That's what I need help with, which is where for me a behavioral cognitive therapist is more beneficial, because I now have something to help me undo the narratives that were hardwired into me. Guess what? From a young age. whether that is, and that's not just from my parents, it's from being a Black woman in the world, it's from being a Black queer woman from the South. Like there's so many different avenues, experiences that shaped, you know, the things that people enjoy about me, that I enjoy about myself, and the hangups that I have.
Right.
And I do feel like I'm not sure if people are actually doing the shadow work. I don't think men are doing the shadow work. I don't.
I don't.
I don't think a lot of people are, though. I don't think
yeah.
it's just men.
I was gonna say.
I don't think a lot of people are actually genuinely, and I shouldn't say a lot, you know, I don't think I think a lot of people are too, but I think when I step outside of our community of friends, it's in those moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, the amount of people who are unhealed.
Yeah.
In certain areas where you could have some healing in. It's heartbreaking to me. This is another offshoot, and then I'm gonna get us back on track with my next question because it does feed into what you're saying. But I think about that sometimes, and I know it's going to be a touchy subject, but it's true. I think about that sometimes with Black men and the way that they treat Black women, and in how I find sometimes just in the layers of what you're saying about this idea of how you're supposed to be seen, the American dream, the financial aspect of things, economical, how much you're earning, what type of your macho-ness, all of this. I find a lot of times like Black men who are mistreating Black women, who are mistreating trans women, all those different offshoots.
Talk about it.
It often feels like because you're not accepted by the white man in the way that you want to be, or by society in the way that you want to be, or you can't measure up to this idea of success or like ultimate privilege, you then take your venom of what you're feeling internally and you spit it out to the person that you assume is weaker than you.
Yes.
And I do think that that is the really painful adverse effect of something like male loneliness, where you are causing harm towards the people who often have to, sometimes not by choice, offer the most support to you.
Right. I think the pipeline that you just described is correct. I would add to it is that you know, middle class white men's competition and aspiration is their boss, their wealthy white counterparts that sign their check.
Yeah.
People of color's aspiration is how white people get treated.
Yes.
Trans people and LGBTQ's aspiration is how cis
Yes. That's
hetero
true.
people get treated.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of in this space where we are likening ourselves to something higher. And mind you, wealthy white people's competition is each other. So
really,
you know, if the loneliness happens, and I don't want to say that, you know, wealthy people aren't lonely too, because they are. You know,
of
more
course,
often than you think.
Because it's unfulfilling.
Because wealth is unfulfilling. Wealth gets tiring after a while.
It gets boring.
It gets boring.
After
Having
a while.
everything does get boring after a while. And I feel like the data shows that most of the people who stay in, let's say, I don't want to say let's say 75%, because I actually looked this up. 75% of men who experience male loneliness are people who watch or have been watching red pill content since they hit puberty.
What about the men though who don't watch that content? Like, I think that we've really focused a lot on people who are quite conservative, but in reality, I see it in men who are progressive and men who are liberal. I think you have men who really consider themselves to be allies of women, and yet they're terrible to date. They have a lot of their own personal hangups. They are not communicative. They avoid conflict, but they're voting Democrat. They're nice enough, you know, like I feel like there's different scales, you know, and sometimes I'm like, is it just the Andrew Tates, or is it also seeping into all these different levels of existence? And we're focusing so much on the extremists that we're missing it when it's like our friend.
Well, I mean, I don't think politics makes it like mutually, like I don't think they're mutually
Mm,
exclusive,
yeah.
but I do think that there is something to be said about people who tend to linger into red pill content, being the example that we were using before, violent
Right.
and more outbursty and
Yeah.
those kinds of things. But male loneliness doesn't discriminate politically, but it does weave itself in the economic expectations
Okay.
that men are supposed to have. And so if men are feeling like they're lacking in some kind
Yeah.
of way,
That's where it's most prevalent.
that's where it's it's if a guy is not over here like envying you, then you're not
Right. You're
doing it
not
right.
doing it right. And that is a universal effect, but we just see it most, I think, impactfully among people who are into that red pill content. Like
Hmm.
that's where yeah, I would agree with that. And I guess maybe the reason that I was bringing up like the other angle is because sometimes I'm like, how do we fight patriarchal conditioning like on a day to day? And sometimes it really it's challenging sometimes for me to think about the labor that you take on doing that. And I think a lot of times I think about a certain situations and it's so subtle where I'm like, I do think women who are dealing with men who have a particular sort of loneliness or that energy, you feel that instinct like to take care or to console. And it is sometimes at the sacrifice of your own emotional safety.
Hmm.
And so I think sometimes for me, the way to combat that is no, my emotional safety comes first. And what does that look like for me when I am engaging with men in
Mm.
terms of what I tolerate, in terms of what I don't put up with, in terms of what I'm learning to be more comfortable saying without fear? But you constantly have to be so strategic about it. So I'm curious also because I feel like you are in so many different environments where you do have to navigate men.
Yeah.
How do you feel like how do you engage with the patriarchy? Do you feel like how do you manage?
It is much easier to stave off these things when you're in a group of people who are like-minded. Staying in the group, for that matter, for protecting yourself socially or having support, is really important. They say never to be the first to do anything, and the reason why is because being the first person to do something often means that you don't have a lot of support. You don't
Hmm.
have a lot of people in your community, and oftentimes it requires a certain level of bravery to
Hmm.
be in a position where you are trying to navigate and open the door for someone that comes after you.
Right.
And so for me, as a person that works in construction as an elevator engineer or a field engineer, I with most of the men that I work with, I think what's very challenging is that there are expectations of me as a woman to from everything from not cursing, which is fucking ridiculous, to having to like allow people to interrupt me even though I know what the
Hmm.
fuck I'm talking about.
Right.
And so the way that I have learned to combat that is with very pregnant pauses
Ooh.
and staring. You see, you felt that?
Yeah, we did that for a moment.
Did you
I
feel
did.
did you feel
I
that?
did.
There is a lot that can be said with saying
Right.
nothing at
Right.
all.
You make people there's a discomfort.
If you can hold a pregnant pause with somebody who's
And
offending
that
you, it will make them behave.
I'm really glad you said that because I'm sitting here as we're like, trailing through this and was curious what your response was going to be to that. And I love that you said that because I do think part of the struggle of people not being able to break out of these sorts of cycles of behavior. And I'm talking about male loneliness. I'm talking about toxic masculinity, that aggression, the cutting people off, all these different things that are facets of each other. I do think it stems from people not ever being uncomfortable,
Yeah,
not
and
ever being
that's
made to sit in the discomfort of their
mhm.
behavior and being able to continue with their behavior because nobody is actually holding up a mirror. and saying, look at yourself. Did you hear yourself? I'm not entertaining this actually, and I don't even need to say a word in order to tell you so.
Yeah,
I think that's
you're completely
very effective.
I
Very
think you're
effective.
completely right about that.
I want to switch gears into dating and into finding a partner, because if there's one thing that I keep noticing, particularly with men, is that they really lack emotional resiliency. Just across the board. Like that man, if let's say he starts dating a woman, and at first she's cooking and cleaning and doing these things, and then she realizes, this isn't how it should be, and she starts speaking up more, and he loses it, and his heart is broken, he universalizes that experience.
Right.
And so I find that,
universalizing as in not learning.
Not learning. Yes. That's another way of putting it. Literally.
Not learning.
Not learning. Just being like, oh, this is how all women are.
Right.
They're going to all betray me this way. They're all going to do this to me. They all behave this way. Like, it just becomes the new baseline on how they view women. They don't actually engage with it in a way of taking any accountability. I would say the adverse effect of that I am also seeing with women, in the same token that women are okay with being alone, I do think that women and queer people, I will say LGBTQ people fall into this, they guard themselves more until someone proves to them that they are safe to be around. So there's this mirroring of fear that's going on, and I wonder if, especially for men, maybe I do think in this instance, courage is missing. So there's these emotional fears that create these cycles, right? Where people are disappointed, they're dismissed, they're hurt. And then you have this culture now in dating of defensive patterns that are blocking intimacy.
Right.
So when you're thinking about modern dating and this topic, do you think that what's missing, is it a skill gap? Is it a fear gap? Is it a courage gap? What do you think, even in your own experience, what do you think is the biggest challenge of modern dating?
The biggest issue is that people don't have enough money to live. People don't have enough money, and for the first time in ever in life, we have access to seeing how other people are living large. And so there's this comparison and self-doubt and bias and insecurity that is in some of us, right? Who are trying to date. And the gap only intensifies when we are attributing our expectations to the person that we're dating to fulfill this gap, to fulfill this void.
Sure.
And so dating when you have a void is especially dangerous. And what do I mean by a void?
I was going to say, what do you mean by that? A void?
A void is something where there is an emptiness or loneliness or expectation or desire to a goal to be fulfilled. Dating is not a goal.
Oh my gosh. Say that one more time.
Dating is not a goal.
Okay.
Dating is not a check mark.
It's not a checklist.
It's not a list.
It's not a game where you're keeping points and scoring.
No.
And it's not.
The thing too is that within the community that we have of family and their expectations that are placed on us, a lot of them are operating from void. They transcend you, and it becomes generational.
Yes, that's so real too. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying in terms of when you recognize that, doing the work that you need to understand those parts of yourself.
Yeah.
Because everybody has, I think, especially when you've been living a certain amount of years, you develop triggers and traumas and voids. I think that's real. But I think being honest with yourself about those things, and not, like you were saying, using anyone to fill those voids or to fulfill those parts of you, it's not sustainable.
Right.
It's definitely not sustainable. And I do think that many women run into that conundrum of, oh, I can fix him.
No, you can't. Oh my God. Stop fixing these dudes. My God. They're not the tree. Oh, you're not at IKEA. You can't build the couch to sit on.
Okay.
You need men are not furniture. Men are not women are not furniture. No human being can be fixed.
Okay.
You can groom people, which
Mm.
will call to cause your ethics.
Mm-hmm.
You can persuade people. You can have a lifestyle that makes people assimilate to. But a lot of those things are choices that the individual has to make. Sometimes, if it's grooming, actually, all the time, if it's grooming, the individual is not aware that they're making a choice. But that's a
Mm-hmm.
separate topic. But you can't fix people. You can't
Right.
fix their voids. If they are lonely, or they are missing something, or they're sad, or they're going through
Mm-hmm.
something, or they have a personality disorder,
Mm-hmm.
you can't fix that, because you're basically saying that you can redirect the synapses of their brain that allows them to feel triggered, or respond in a certain way when they were traumatized. Unless you were actual literal God, or whatever, like energetic matter that's created us as human
Yeah.
beings, you can't do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, people are really delusional
Mm.
in thinking that, oh, I'm just gonna, this person was mistreated their whole life, and the falling in love with the sob story while ignoring your own is crazy work.
Ooh. But
I've done it.
we've all done it.
I've done it.
We've all
And by
done
no
it.
means, I want to make that very clear. I'm not on some moral pedestal. My observations come from personal experience.
Say that.
I'm
Okay.
telling y'all, because I do
Been in
not.
the same predicaments.
Yeah, and I
That
don't
is
want
literally
anybody
why.
to be
And I've
in the
said that,
same predicament.
and you know what? I had someone say that to me one time, that, and I do see my experiences that way, where the things that I've gone through in my life, I think would surprise people, certain dynamics, especially in romantic relationships, that I've accepted, or that I've had to heal through or learn through, or, just cultivate my own sense of self worth, self care, self love. But I do think there are many difficult circumstances I've been through where it's a balance, where I'm like, listen, I've been through this too. I know what you're going through. Everybody's on their journey. But there are also other moments where I'm like, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, because I've been through this,
Right.
this is what's happening. And you can choose it's just information. You can choose to do with what you want with that information. I'll say this. There were certain dynamics or relationships that I was in where people noticed things that were harmful and or abusive, and they didn't say anything. And later on in life, when I asked them why, it was really kind of that, I don't need to be getting involved. That's something for you to figure out. It's your life. And I'm not sure that we can be operating that way anymore. But I think it is important, when you've gone through certain experiences in your life, or if you've learned certain things, to share those things, and to have these sorts of conversations that are frank and that are convoluted and that go in so many different directions, because we are having, I think, these sorts of conversations in our minds all the time, especially as these things become larger conundrums for us to undo.
Yeah. I think that there's many moving parts. I think the biggest moving part is the wealth disparity.
Yeah.
Why can't I say that word?
Disparity, because you don't
Yes.
want it to be true.
I don't want it to be true.
You don't want it to be true.
No,
And
I
it's not,
don't.
I'm going to be really transparent and say, I think, as a true Cancer, I think that sometimes I do get caught up in the emotional aspect of things and in the core wounds,
Ooh.
those sorts of things. But I actually think that it is really enlightening that you brought in the angle of finance and wealth and power, and claiming that in a society that is built upon those sorts of values and principles.
Yeah.
To this day, like, we are seeing that now making a very disturbing comeback.
Oh yeah.
So I do think it's really essential that you brought up that point, because I do think when we're talking about the male loneliness epidemic, when we're talking about toxic masculinity, it is much greater than just how men are behaving. It is the design of the system that is also
hurting them.
Yes. And I do think it's really important that we recognize that you can be angry, you can feel enraged about it, and I think it's important to name it as a poison. It's poison.
Mm.
And I think it's important for us to sit down and really sometimes sit in the heaviness of that.
Mm.
Um, but I also think it's important the way that you were just pointing out the different ways as women we experience it, how we sit in it, how we navigate it, how we explore it, and how we participate. Like, just out of curiosity, what felt different about your fiance? Like, what felt healthy to you, or how did you know, like, oh, this is different than what I've experienced before?
Um, he listens. He listens. He didn't find the fact that I am on my way or my pursuit to becoming a powerful person in my own right by using my skill. He didn't find that intimidating.
It wasn't a threat.
It wasn't threatening. The reason I fell in love with him is because he listens. He also is not afraid to share his feelings. There's sometimes that he doesn't want to talk about things, but that's everybody.
Right.
But if I ask him, well, how do you feel about this? He'll pause and he'll think about it, and then he'll tell me and
Yes.
respond.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I've had to become a better partner because I sometimes don't listen. And I can say that I don't listen, and it comes from a place of anxiety of not being listened to.
Sure. Yes.
So
always being on the defense.
Always being on the defense.
Yeah.
Always feeling like I'm being attacked. And
Yeah.
so I feel like and also he was just kind. Like
It
I
really
told
it
him,
really is that simple.
yeah, like he just was
It really
like,
is that simple.
I'll tell you what, it's funny when we met, we were like so into each other. Then we had a date, and he was 20 minutes late. And let me tell you something about me. Be on fucking time.
Okay.
Be on fucking time.
Don't waste my money or my time.
And I was standing there, and I said, because I also have a fear of abandonment. I have abandonment issues.
Sure.
So I do not like having to wait for anybody.
Right.
So I texted him, "You're 20 minutes late."
Right.
And he said, "I am so unbelievably sorry. I'm on my way." He sent me a screenshot of him in a cab. He like sent all these things. He's like, "I was running late at work. I really didn't understand that I wasn't going to be able to get there in time. I'm on my way. I promise you I'll make it up to you." Now, men say this all the time.
Sure.
But the way that he made it up to me was he would go, "Oh, I saw that you were looking at this blanket when you liked it, so I bought it for you." And I was like, "What?" Like,
yeah.
"Oh, I know that you like Grogu from Star Wars, so like I got you this Grogu." He got me this
intimacy,
this Grogu like cat blanket thing, because he's like, "Oh, I know you like to be comfortable on the couch," and that's what I mean by listening,
and that's what I mean by intimacy. I don't think people register sometimes. Like, I think sometimes people checklist it, like what intimacy is. Like, even what you were saying, like, okay, he bought you dinner, okay, but it is special when someone remembers details about you, and not just remembers those details, but makes intentional effort to integrate those details into the dynamic that you're building with each other.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he does that constantly, and it's not a one-time thing.
Right.
It's a behavior.
Yes.
And I think that
you can trust it.
Yes, because it's constant.
Yes.
And I feel like if any person is and that's where it becomes transactional. If the behavior where you're giving someone something only exists because you expect something in return, and not because you want to just make them happy.
Correct. I feel like something when I see y'all, even if it's just at a party, there is no ego there. What I mean by that is no one's trying to show up one another. No one's trying to show off one another. No, it's not about that. It's two human beings who just really are safe in each other's company. And none of it is performative.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really, there's an authenticity that I think that y'all share with one another that's always really beautiful to witness.
Thank you.
So I'll just say that.
That's That's such a nice thing to say.
And it's a lovely thing to it's beautiful when you are existing in modern time, modern dating of today, all these things we're talking about, when you get to witness that. There are men and women out there who are in healthy relationships with themselves and with
Mm.
each other. And it's absolutely possible, but it's all the things that we're describing. And those are things to cherish and welcome in your life, not to run away from. So but B, I wanted to close out this conversation. We've been saying so much, but you are a person of many different passions and interests. And I did want to ask you what's next for you. And yeah, let's just start there.
I think I'm building my foundation and I will be for a very long time. Part of that foundation is work centered, so I'm building my skill.
Yeah.
I'm Even though I'm a field engineer, I am still a student, and I work for somebody who has really changed my life. In this next year, I will be venturing on doing a lot of work, detailed advancement as far as being on my own,
Mm.
and which I literally can't even talk about because it makes me want to cry
Oh,
because it's so being with somebody every day for 3 or 4 years and learning a skill from them, but then also that person adding joy to your life and then setting you out on your own to go and you know show to the world that you can do this is very it's
I
very
remember you talking
difficult.
about the start of your engineering. Not the start, but I feel like I met you somewhere in the middle of it.
Yes.
And to see where it began and where you are now, there's just like a different level of understanding, I think, of the goals that you want to achieve and what you can do with it and how you can take it and what path you can carve for yourself. I feel like you're always very intentional. So I
Yeah.
hear that even in what you're saying now.
With friends, I think that, and with myself and friends, and just with myself, making sure that I am whole and
Mm.
using my free time to do things that really are my passion. I'm a creative person. I love to
Yeah.
make things for
Yeah.
people. I love to make things in general, and I really want to see if I can have a work life that's fulfilling, but also have a personal life that is filled with people like yourself,
Oh,
who are kind and have their own direction but are also creative. And
mm.
being in this vibration for me is really great because it makes me feel like that the sky is a limit, that I can go past
Mm.
the
I love
sky.
that.
I can go wherever it is that I want to go.
Yeah.
And having support, building a support system means saying no to a lot of people.
Ugh, say that.
And I'm gonna be saying no
Okay.
to a lot of things, to a lot of people, to a
Okay.
lot of places,
Okay.
to a lot of situations.
Right.
Be a person, and this is another thing I've learned
It's okay
because
to be selective, child.
being selective. I very recently stopped being friends with somebody because I realized they think that they can't be corrected or that nothing they do is wrong. They are
Girl.
not consistent as a person in
Mm.
friendships. And if you say anything, then you're the problem. And all of a sudden, anything that person knows about you, they're throwing in your face. That is a toxic motherfucker.
It is.
And what was hard for me was that this person was presented themselves in my life in parts where I was experiencing trauma. And that can be very difficult to discern.
Mm-hmm.
When someone shows up in your life when you're experiencing trauma, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good fucking person just because they happen to be there to get you out of it.
Okay. Say that. I really do think it's important for people to take in what you're saying and thinking about why you might be holding on to a relationship longer than you need to be.
Exactly. You said it perfectly.
My very last question for you being, what is home for you?
Oh, wow. That's a deep question. As a person who has grown up in and out of shelters my whole life
Yeah.
and never had a stable place, I've never lived anywhere longer than 4 years
Wow.
in my life.
Wow.
Now that I am lucky enough that we're not moving from because we own the place, right?
Right.
Now that I have that, I look at home in a very different way. I think that I've never had this kind of stability in my life. And I'm looking forward to finally actually having a life worth living. I have work stability and I have home stability. These are things I never had as a child or as an adult. The last 3 years since I've met my fiance and since I started my job, have been the first times I've ever had stability. So I went 30 plus years without a place that I really truly felt was mine.
Yeah.
And so home for me is quiet. Home for me is where I can take my wig off and girl,
period. Take that bra off too.
yeah, take the bra off. Sometimes, I have to, I wear a wig to work, whatever it is, what it is. I got to do what I got to do, right? It is what it is.
I love that you said home is quiet.
Home is quiet.
There's like a peacefulness
And
in that.
sometimes the TV is noisy,
Yeah.
but my mind gets to rest away from all the expectations and nonsense. And there's candles at home. It smells like cookies.
Okay.
My dog's there. Sometimes he needs a bath because he smells like corn chips. That's what home is.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
and my fiance is there. Of
course. Period. B, thank you for joining me in my home, in my sanctuary. This was really a pleasure. I cannot wait for people to really be impacted by everything that you shared, because you have such a beautiful voice, and everything that you share is always it always leaves me contemplating life in a really powerful new way. So thank you. Love you.
Oh, thank you. You're going to make me cry. Thank you so much for having me, Dashka.
You're welcome.
You're an amazing person.
Thank you. Okay, that's a wrap.
Yay!